Welcome back to Made Up of Wires, where we are decompiling Castlevania Symphony of the Night. If you're not familiar with the Symphony of the Night decompilation project, you can go to soten.z.dev. We'll go over some of the tools that we use today, some of the things that we've been working on, and get into some decompiling. Soten.z.dev has progress on all the overlays. If I remember correctly, there is somewhere between 40 and 60 overlays, and we have about 15 to 20 of them in flight, some of them completed. We've been working on BO4. Oh, and I still don't have RBO5. Let me show you how I would add RBO5. It's pretty simple, but let's see if I can get that done. So we keep this page is actually in a separate branch, but in the same repository. And my branch is relatively clean. You can see I have a lot of cruft in here. I should be safe to do this. I'm going to check out the docs branch. And docs is a very different branch from the other branches. It doesn't share the same history. It's basically a completely separate tree, but it is in the same repo. And here we're going to look in source, and source has a game meta. So this is a Node.js app. My knowledge of Node.js is virtually zero, not completely zero, but virtually zero. I'm going to add to the US overlays RBO4. Sorry, RBO5. And then also add another entry down here. And this is easy to screw up. I screw this up all the time. And then change the name. I did correctly misspell this here. So we want the Doppleganger 40 boss. We already have progress coming for this because it's in the main branch and progress is being reported. So that should be all that I need to do in this branch. Now the trick, as always, is running Node, and I'm trying to think if I've what I've done in the past. I'm going to. Is there a package.json? So it looks like there is a start script. So let's try that. So I didn't do it with yarn. No, I always forget what the commands are for Node. I used yarn at a previous job, so I'm somewhat familiar with that, but not front end is definitely not my strong suit. Anyway, I'll test this in a bit. I am going to add my game meta change. And before I submit that, I will test it because like I said, I have screwed that up in the past, and I do want to make sure that I submit a working change. All right, so we're back in RBO5 branch. I'm working, my branch is called RBO5. It could be called whatever you want. I call it RBO5 because this is where I started doing the Doppleganger 40 work and merging that together with Doppleganger 10. So we had started working on some functions yesterday. We got through about 6 of them, 3 in each Doppleganger 40 and Doppleganger 10. None of those have made it back. I didn't submit any of those yet, but we can start looking for other functions to decompile. The ones in doors I thought were interesting, so we can keep working there. And the other ones that I think are interesting are ones that have a match in another overlay. So we found some indoors that were also in the outer wall. Here are a bunch that are in DRA, and those would probably be good to look at as well. But really, any of these are fair game. Let me do this. I'm going to go back to the terminal. I like using find and looking at the non-matchings with a name that ends in .s. Use the ls option to print the file sizes. And then I use awk to extract field 7, which is the size, field 11, which is the path, and then sort by size in reverse. And that gives us a listing here of what is left. The ones in 4648C, a high likelihood of also being in DRA. And everything above 10K or below 10K in size should be relatively straightforward. I'm a little curious about this this mega function here. We'll have to get to that eventually and see what that might be. Entity mist is a big one as well. So let me find one of these that hasn't been done. That I also think we'll be successful with today. I'm gonna start there. See if that. So this 3AC8 is part of a cluster of functions along with D10 right above it that I started working on Monday and didn't get to any solution. So I'm not going to go back to those at the moment. This has an analog in Doppleganger 10. I would like to find something that's in 3 or more, if possible. Well, let's try this one. It's a little bigger, but it has a perfect match with one of the functions in DRA. And the function is going to be called the same thing. So there's no jump table, which used to be kind of a complicated thing as late as 6 months ago or so. That would cause some problems. Jump tables were RO data. They were extracted separately from this data, so you had to go find the jump table and then know how to put all that together in decomp.me. In this case, that we don't have to worry about that anymore. I had been working on BO4 or Doppleganger 10 first, but this time we're going to start with Doppleganger 40. And I'm going to see where this is in the source code. So that's in 4648C as well. This seems to be a lot of the same a la carte code, just adapted for the doppelgangers. So just below other code that has been worked on. So I'm going to go into decomp.me and see if anybody has worked on this. So this, because it's named the same thing, I'm going to go back and grab the BO4 version. because it's named the same thing, these are going to come from not this version of the function, but the DRA version of the function. And this was something Zinamo did about 9 months ago. Let's go grab that DRA function. One day I'll learn to grep properly. And this one's a little different. A lot of what we work on is entity update functions. And this one is not that. It is a helper function that is eventually returning a primitive. And there's just a little bit of complexity here with the shifts. We've talked about this before, and I'll talk about it again, related to how Symphony of the Night uses a different fixed point format for its numbers than is the native PlayStation format. And so we'll see conversions between those when using the SDK functions. I don't have a scratch yet, so let me copy this. I have a script called pbcopy. It's called pbcopy because there's an equivalent command on a Mac called pbcopy. And what my script does here is forwards this to a port that I have open through SSH and puts it in my pasteboard so that I can use decomp.me locally. And we're going to grab the signature for this function because it is a little funky. Anti-gravity well. Good to have you. And yeah, let's grab this. I was playing through Soten for all the decomp that I do. I haven't played the game much lately, but I was playing it last night because I wanted to get the gravity boots and just put a little video together showing how, like in the clock room, for example, the intended path is to do a double jump to get up to Olrox's quarters. And how you could also kind of bypass logic with the form of wolf dropkick tech, as the kids say. All right, so we have our initial decomp. A lot of the symbols that we've worked hard to add are helping out here. So we'll see Doppleganger animation set down here, as well as Doppleganger Z priority. We're actually going to blow all this away though, and just use the one that came from DRA. Goodbye. And I'm not sure yet if I want to... We should look at the PSP version just to check if this constant does need to change between the two. I think that this is fine. I'm going to undo this for a second. All of these are unknown still, so I'm not too worried about the types. Player dot will exchange with Doppleganger dot. And then I need to go through, I need to grab the macro for Doppleganger. I should remember to add that to the context before. So the context only gets saved when you're creating a new scratch. And then we need to go through and figure out what each of these globals is. And I can get those from DRA. So I'm going to do that. Some of this older code, unfortunately, is written in a way where these variables aren't necessarily the globals. They're not always defined in the file where they're created. What is it not liking? I added a semicolon, that's what it's not like. And so sometimes they're in a header file like this, and so they'll be in the DRA header. And most of the time they're not used anywhere else. And so I really dislike this style, though there's no reason for them to be declared in dra.h. And it's possible that this whole area could just be moved into, all of this data could be moved over here. So sometimes these also aren't what they say. Unsigned 32s have a high likelihood of being pointers. Oh, so this is mist related. And we'll see if I have that. Yeah, we don't have mist struct. So let's see where that is. I'm going to move this out into a new header, specifically for mist. I'll keep it in DRA, I think. And so now it's ready for when I want to include it in Doppleganger as well. All right, so let's go back to decomp.me. Now we have mist struct. And so we should compile. So the only thing that I'm expecting to be different is the constants, but we might have a few things here or there. So on line 107, we do have a value that's different, this 10f. So this is the color lookup table. Doppleganger has slightly different colors from Alucard, so you don't get in that Spider-Man scenario where they're both pointing at each other and you can't tell one from the other. And so now I'm just going to go fix all of the constants and the globals. So these are different enough that I might have to pull the PSP version to see. This assignment here, it is still 118, that constant is here. So that's correct. So this one, luckily, was easier than I thought it was going to be. No real change. Line 75, there is a slight difference. So this has angle 1. And the offset that's being calculated is for position X. And then the value of position X at that. This as well. So these seem incorrect. My guess is that I screwed up this. It should be 8 bytes earlier. So this will be 7, 8. And so then these will need to be fixed. So these constants will appear wrong. This one on offset 190, it's just grabbing the top 2 bytes, 16 bits. So that's going to be the same regardless. The bottom is grabbing the bottom 4 bits. If we look at what those are, 3380 on the one that we're creating is 3378 plus 8, which gives us 3380. That addition is completed at compile time, so it'll work out to be the same thing. So I think this will work. I'm going to pull the PSP version really quickly just to double check that that value is different. And to find the PSP version, if I don't have it already, I need a unique value. This 4188 is actually a pretty nice value to grab. Otherwise 20F looks like it would be good as well. So let me see if I still have that. Often I'll clean, run a make clean, and when I do that, it obliterates all the extracted ASM, and I just take this out temporarily. So we can look in BO4 though. And is any of this here? So that is not there. So let's look at the 20F. There's one function that has 20F. And it does appear twice in this function, so I'm relatively happy about that. Seems likely. So what I want to find then is, do we have evidence, and this would occur just above where we are now. Do we have evidence that there is a 118 or a 418 here? And actually, the 118 is there, not the 418. But down below is an 18. So there are differences between the PSP version and the PlayStation version, but not in the same way as Alucard. So we'll fix that on this side. And there might be other differences as well, but we know that this is a difference. T-page is the texture page, in case case you're wondering. And so then on the PSP side, this is going to be an 18. And that is an index into which textures to use. So I think this looks pretty good. The Misstruct I don't need to take over. This was 5.8. I will do an include. So we need to go up. We're now in the boss directory, now in the source directory, back down to the DRA directory, and mist.h. And we can see if this compiles. More compiling than I thought. Oh, I did rebase, and I checked everything out. Let me do that in parallel to make it a reasonable time. Otherwise, we'll be waiting for a while. You can see my load is extremely high. 33. That's a pretty ridiculous load. I've done most of my career has been like DevOpsy, so that's what the kids call it now. We just called it development, where you admin the server that you're deploying your application to and kind of know everything about it. I think it's gotten better, and maybe hardware's just gotten faster, but Linux load, when it gets above the CPU count, the system just gets destroyed. It used to be swap. If you went into swap on a Linux system, like, it was over. And then we started getting enough RAM that didn't happen very often, or you just disable swap so it didn't happen and let out of memory deal with it for you. And then what was left was load. This is actually very responsive still. On like my personal choice for a Unix is FreeBSD. FreeBSD does much better for interactive tasks under load than Linux does, or at least historically did. So this matched out, looks good. I'm going to do the same thing on BO4. This is not named the same thing on BO4. So I'm going to go find name. Maybe we should take this opportunity to rename it as well. I'm going to look in the dupes report. And this tells us what file it's going to be in as well. And the globals, as I mentioned many times in the past, between these two, the globals are going to be different. And so I need to find the correct globals. There's two ways we can do that. One is to compile and see what breaks. Everything broke. Probably the best way to do it is to open that assembly file and go through each of them and replace them. And I think I have the right order, but I'm not sure. We'll find out soon enough if this is the right order. We can fix the order. That's not a big deal. Oh, did I not do that right? Oh, I'm in the wrong file, placing the wrong thing. Okay. And as always, the biggest concern is, are there other symbols that use the same address space? And if so, do we need to be careful not to mess with those? So let's see if this does it. Some of these might be out of order, and we'll have to fix them. Looks like I missed that some. I missed that. So let's see if that works. Undefined reference to func. So we have a function reference to fix as well. Oh, we named it the name that the other ones have. And like I said, we need to decide if we're going to rename this symbol or not. We'll leave it like this for now to see if it matches. It didn't, so let's figure out what the order is. All right, so at 4EA70, 98 and 0 look like they need to be swapped. Let's do this. Looks like I missed one on the 15. So that one is wrong as well. So let's swap these as well. Oh, I didn't swap it the other way, did I? Drat. Drat. I think I've made more of a mess for myself than I intended. It's okay. So F98, F00, I think these are actually inverted. So I may have had that right to begin with, and just need to swap this order. Let's try that. We'll get these eventually. So these are two tables. They're really just inverted versions of each other. Let's look at what. I'm not even showing you what I have here, so. Got it. So the outer I'm just trying to map these symbols, and the outer value is the primitives, and then the inner value is one of these arrays or the other. And I may have these wrong still. I think I do have them wrong, but that's okay. Yeah, so still the same error. So 98 and 00 are swapped. So let me fix that. Okay, and now A8 and B0 are swapped. So everywhere B8 exists now should be this A8 value. And everywhere A8 is should be B8. And that should work now. Wait, nope, not quite. Oh, that made it worse. That made it worse. Let's undo that. All right, so B0 and A8. Here's our A8 down here, which is this mist struct. It does make sense that. So what I'm going to do is do a replacement for this B8. I'm going to call it A8 underscore 2. And now let's search for this other A8 and replace it with that original B8 value. That seemed like a good idea. No, those are too different to be able to just do that. All right, let's try one more time. We'll get it. We'll get it. let's look at this offset 4E BC0. So this is right around Z priority. And here's where we have the A8 value being read. That seems right. Oh, I think I know why. This should be a B0. So even though the symbol is A8, but why? Because we're doing that +8 mumbo jumbo. Oh, that still didn't work. Now we have, oh, it should be A0. There we go. That makes more sense. Okay. We'll get it. And let's make, and that should work. There we go. We got it. So now we have the BO4 and our BO5 versions of this function. So another one done. And let's move on. Let's. I'm going to go back to the doors file. And let's see if we can just crank through the rest of the doors. So we basically have the same structure here, these first two files. Hey, Antoine. Good to have you. Are you a professor, teacher? Still working on doppelgangers. Oh, the double bass. Awesome. A long time ago, I played the guitar and tried a few months ago to see if I mean, it's been 20 years and I do not have it still. All right, so I don't know. We'll look at this function to see if it's unique or not, but I'm not sure if it is. So let's do that first. Look at all these scratches that I've opened that I should close out. So it's only unique in that it's specific to doppelgangers, and both doppelgangers use it slightly differently, or slightly different implementations. I'm not sure what we'll find here. Let me see how big this is. It's a big one. So we might not be able to finish this one today, but we'll see. I'm going to look at whether or not this is an entity. So does it show up in the entity table? And it looks like it does. Which tells us what the signature is, which is nice. Yep. So it's not a... So this table will tell us two things. What the entity ID is for this particular update function, as well as that it is an entity update function. And when it's an entity update function, the signature is void with a self entity as the only argument. And we have not too bad. So we have a few structures that have access outside their bounds. That's probably just the next entity over. There are certain things that like it when they can have contiguous entities. I'm going to grab the create entity from current entity signature. And the rest of these M2C figured out, so I'm not too worried about those. Throw that in and see if we get a better decomp. So the double bass is tuned like a modern guitar, is that right? And do you just do bass, or do you do all strings? I would like my son and daughter, they both are in strings. My daughter plays the violin, and my son currently has the cello. That was the biggest thing that they would allow him to play. But to me, the bass is just a really nice, deep sound. And it'd be fun for him to play that. I'm going to go look at this variable here. When we have a variable passed into font print, it's going to be a static string, and we should be able to find that and put that in there directly. Do you teach all strings or just double bass? So this will give us our 2 strings that we have. So we have one PL demo timer and then the step. Is it like at just private lessons or in a school? Well, that's fun. I'm definitely not a somebody who could teach children, I think, very well. I struggle with my own children. I can't imagine teaching somebody else's children. So I really admire my wife as a teacher, and I think it's pretty amazing. All right, so we have a few things I'm going to clean up to get this compiling, and then I will then I'll start worrying about making it correct. So these are going to be operating on the next entity. And there's a couple ways that this can be done. Up here, they very explicitly took out a separate variable and are looking at the next entity that way. We can do that here as well. I don't know if that's how it's done. We'd have to look at the PSP version to be truly confident in that. But it is looking at the next one over. I do know that. So I'm going to take hex 140 minus 8c, which is the size of an entity. Sorry, BC, 140 minus BC. And that gives me 8.4, and 8.4 seems like it's going to be right in the middle of the extension area. And it is, so I need to find, either create a new extension, that's probably the right thing to do, and create a struct, then that will give me some value at 8c. I'm going to look here. We don't have this compiling yet, so I don't know the type. And I'm not going to scan through the assembly until I have something compiled. So I'm just going to make assumptions about the type. And we'll just call this an unknown door. All these start at 7c. And we're not using anything at 7c yet. So our next offset is going to be 8.0. We're not using anything there yet either. And we are using something at 8.4. And we'll say, for now, it's an unsigned 32. And we'll call it unknown 8.4. And then 1FC. So this is 2 away. So we have to go to the next one. And we're setting the same field. So this is dealing with the next entity and the entity after that. Oh, and I need to make this an EXT. And we don't have that field in the union yet. Are there any other languages? Do people know of any other programming languages that have unions in them? Or is that distinctly a C feature? All right, so there's a double case value as well. I think that's because there's a nested case and there's some M2C got confused along the way. I think this case too. So I'm going to put case 2 down here just to keep the logic the same. I don't know if that is correct, but I'm going to put a go to here. And say go to block 34, and then I can get rid of this case. And the logic should be the same. I think they're all mathematically based. I've always heard that math and music go, complement each other. And obviously coding and math are very tightly linked as well. It's all very structured, and you're playing within this set of, defined rules. So let's go to the top and start working down. So our branch is a little bit different. There's 11 cases in the original versus 10 that we have that M2C found. So we'll have to deal with that. Trying to decide if I want to untangle these blocks. Let's do that. So this block 36, for example, is just an increment. Here it's not, but down here it is. So this can be replaced with just a step plus plus increment. This actually was I think a good idea. Because block 34 and 35 are going to do the same thing now as well. These are just step increments. There are some things that I didn't do along the way, like update at struct access. And I just need to be careful because this is going to increment the step and then break. And so anywhere else where these go-tos exist, I need to make sure that that break is happening as well. And this is actually breaking out of not just this case, but everything. And that's what happens here. So that's safe as well. We'll add a break here. Fix this GAPI. And is that all of them? Nope, not quite. I'm not sure why a separate label got added to that. So we were able to get rid of all the labels pretty easily. This is kind of a funny inverted condition. So if it's not 0, we're going to do nothing. If it is 0, we're going to do something. So let's just change that to, if it is 0, we'll do something. We have a couple other entity extensions that we need to deal with eventually. I'm not going to do that quite yet. We're still missing a case. So let's, this is how I debug cases. You can debug them the way that you'd like. When we have RO data down here, it's telling us what the offset is. Actually, my strings up here might screw this up a little bit. So let me get those strings out for now, because that may be affecting the RO data. And I want to make sure the offsets are all the same. Yeah, it was. So it was giving me an additional 32 bytes in RO data. So I'm going to go look at each of these labels. And so here we have, this is the 0th index. And so what I expect to see, that makes sense for case 0. We're going to do a bunch of math up here to determine what index we should look at in the jump table. And 0 is usually at 0. And we have most of the values between 0 and 9. I think so. These don't always have each of the values. One day I think somebody will come through and give names to all these, but for now that's not what we have. So I want to look for the other RO data labels. Here's 4. This matches up as well. 8, C, 10, 14. These all match. And this should tell me 18 where 1C. So this will divide these by 4, and that is the the number of the case. 20, 24, and then 28 down here, 159. And we're missing that case. So it looks like there is a case 10, possibly, that is just incrementing the step. So I'm going to try adding that case 10. And it is not quite right. Actually, it looks like it exists, but just breaks. Yeah. I was wrong as to where it was, but I think that's correct now. So if we go back up to the top and look at the calculations for the switch statement up here, now we have all 11 entries. Or sorry, this is saying if you're less than 11, go to the jump table. Otherwise, you're going to jump out of right past the jump table. So I could go back now and put those strings back in, but I'm going to leave them like this for now just to avoid the immediate differences that will cause. No, it's itchy. All right. So there probably are some other structural things that I should deal with. 87, this is telling us, this is what I needed to know what the type was. Store byte versus store word. Word is 32-bit, byte is 8-bit, so we know what this type is now. And it is just a byte, so those will be correct. We could go through and figure out all these illegals as well. Like ice up in here. Inappropriate. So we have offset 10, so this is 16 bytes into the extension. And M2C is telling us, so the illegal union basically pads out the entire extension area with arrays of each of the types so that M2C comes in and it'll choose the best option. And so we know that it's unsigned 16 at offset 8C. So we need to pad the rest of this out. So I'm going to make this a U32, but make it 24 bits. So then our next one is 8.8, and we don't need that. 8C is what we do need, and that'll be unsigned 16. Antoine, do you code as well? And this looks like it's there's some funny business going on here, but this is just going to be a decrement, and so this is probably a timer, and we can probably call it a timer. This is obviously abnormal for I think what most people would consider coding. Usually, so let me try this a couple different ways. Usually doing this decrement will automatically put the shift in place. Oh, and it does look like I was one off. It's 9C, not 8C. So I do need to put some more padding in place. And it does look like it was it is using a variable for this. Let me revert what was there. I am still going to do a pre-decrement. And I'm a little surprised that the shift doesn't happen automatically, but we can do that. Yeah, so this is a 16-bit value, so shifting by 16 bits, like the original had, doesn't make any sense, because it will always... Oh, it's shifting the other direction. Shifting the other direction also doesn't make sense, unless... it is for... sign extension purposes. That's usually how sign extensions work on the PlayStation 1. It's not typically done manually like that. So I need an additional 4 bytes. And this is going to be 9C here. This is all very low level and odd. Oh, I needed to make that 16. Most of my professional coding is not nearly this low level, nor I don't know, whatever Soden is. Fun. Oh, I still need my Doppleganger macro. I meant to copy that in last time. Temp v 0_2. I'm going to rename it to be angle. G entities 64. That's actually the stage entity offset. So this is Doppleganger. Do we have 2 symbols for that? We might have 2 symbols for that. It should be Doppelgangers. Position X val. So we have 2 different ways to access position X. One is val, which is all 32 bits. The other one is position I, which has a high and a low, which gives you the top 16 bits or the lower 16 bits. And like I was saying before, I thought that in that other function, there was some code that was doing shifts. We didn't really look at the code at all. It was just trying to match it. But there were some shifts between fixed values with 12-bit offsets versus fixed values with 16-bit parts, and that's largely the difference here. Temp S5 I'm going to call offset X. And give me one second. And temp S4 offset Y. Just need to close the door. Shut out the world. What else? We're not very close on this yet. And there still is a lot. This is interesting. It looks like for time attack controller, I want to look at the signature for this. They used the enums as types. Yeah. So this is dangerous and not portable. And it's nice that it works, but it can cause issues. And the issue, so M2C is able to use this when it's decompiling and it says, hey, I have a time attack event type that is an enum, and so whatever values I can map to those enums directly. The problem is you can't control what type that is. The C standard basically does not define what the size of an enum is, just that the enum will be big enough to store all the values. And so on a 64-bit native platform, you might have an enum with 3 or 4 values in it. It might use a 64-bit value. Normally it won't, and most compilers don't. But it could. And so I'm not sure if it's by luck or not, but there are other cases where we know a field, for example, is a particular enum. It's always going to be that enum, and that enum has, say, 16 values. The field is a 32-bit field. If we gave that field in a struct the type of the enum, it might make that a 8-bit field. It might make it a 32-bit field. You don't control it, and the C standard doesn't provide any guarantees around that either. So it's nice to see that it works there, and from a programming perspective, I like it more, but we don't get necessarily to make the choices we want to make while decompiling. We just need to do the things that work. There is a bunch here that I'm not that I haven't done anything with yet, but I do need to fix. I'm kind of keeping an eye over here, but not too closely. This particular global, this is in the DRA address space, and it's actually just position Y val. I could add symbols for that as well. That might not be the worst thing. This, I think, is not actually a multiplication, but it's a shift by 4, and this is converting from 24 bits of whole number, 12 bits of fractional, which is the PlayStation float format, to 16 bits of whole, 16 bits of fractional, which is the SOTN format. There's a little bit surprising that these G entities aren't kind of coalescing into the same thing. Let me actually change these back to I high. No, they are storing the whole thing. I would assume that this would have been taken out, but we'll we'll see what's going on in a little bit. So this offset X2 was because those registers were being reused, and so when that happens, M2C gives them a new suffix. I'm just going to reuse offset X and Y variables. There's no reason to create new variables every time a register is reused, since we don't control the registers directly anyway. Hello, Rosoma. Good to have you. Welcome to the stream. We are working on Doppleganger 10 and Doppleganger 40 functions for Symphony of the Night. Here's our same timer that was up above. And so we can do, so this is unknown door, member of that union. And we'll do the same thing here where we decrement it. Still saving off this value into a register and doing the shift business. I would like to fix that, and we'll change this as well. This was basically the same format that other section was in. So this is pretty common, and I may try to do this again. Actually, I know what's going on here, and we can fix it now. Yeah, this is the Inamos project. That's right. Yep, I'm just a contributor to that. So when I made this 9C field, I made it an unsigned field. It should be signed, and that will give us the sign extension behavior, which gives us the shift automatically. So then we can take this pre-decrement and say not that, and then down on 143, this should all match. And I can go back up here then and fix this as well. And that's why it wasn't working before, because I made it unsigned instead of assigned. But this is much nicer, and this is the idiom that's used for most timers. Did you know that Twitch thinks noob is a it thinks you're bullying. You're bullying yourself. Be kind to yourself, Zoma. Twitch doesn't like it when you call yourself a noob. There are always things that can be done, even if you don't have a lot of experience. If you use an emulator or are familiar with an emulator, one of the things that needs to be done in all of the stages is just figuring out what entity update functions are associated with what we see on the screen. So when Splat comes through and extracts this, if we haven't given a name to this address, then it's just going to auto-generate one based on its place in memory. And it would be nice to have a human-readable name. So that's something most anybody can do if you are familiar with the debugger. And I'll open DuckStation up and show you how to do that. That's one thing of many, but I think it's kind of gets people in the mindset as well, and it is relatively... Let me hide those. Wrong windows are being captured. I mentioned earlier that I was playing through. I probably will have to get through most of the game to do what I need to do, but I was capturing video for different sections. And I think I have this state saved. That was just So, hit the debugger. So these are Doppleganger related functions, and I need to load a state just before Doppleganger, which I think is this one. So I have the debugger up. If you're using DuckStation, PPSS, no, not PPSSPP, that's PSP. PSXSR, it has a debugger built in. Many emulators do have debuggers. This is the CPU debugger in the debug menu that you can open. What we want to do is take this. Let me get rid of the debugger. Take the address that was put in the function name, which is this. And I don't have a hotkey or a special button for DuckStation or the debugger, so I always have to mouse over to it. The plus icon here, you gotta pause first. The plus icon will give you a breakpoint. We want it set to execute, so when this code gets executed, we want the emulator to stop. And then we can unpause it. One thing is this particular address is shared for all the stages. So just because we hit this breakpoint before we get to the Doppelganger room doesn't make much of a difference. Wrong controller. We need to do it when we only need to care about whether the emulator stops when we're in the room. And of course, the controller is not configured. Typical streamer. It's plugged in. There we go. Alright, so when I go up to Doppelganger room, we're actually going to hit this breakpoint pretty early. So it loads in from disk. Oh, we didn't hit it. Never mind. I'm pretty sure that this does get triggered in this room, but I could be wrong. So I'll just get through this fight. And so we've looked at these block doors before. And those block doors went away as well. So this actually didn't get triggered in this room. I'm a little surprised. Unless I screwed something up. Yeah, this wasn't triggered. Now we're going to leave the Doppelganger room. That stage will never get loaded again. So for Doppelganger, you really have to have a breakpoint or a save set right before the boss, because you never... yeah, I pasted it from the clipboard. That's how I did it. So there's other ways to do that. That's how I like to do it. In this case, obviously, we didn't hit that breakpoint, so we can't name it. We do have to find where those things are hit, and sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's really not obvious what is going to trigger one of these entity updates. You can go through and find other code that references what these entity IDs are and things like that if you are technically minded. All right, so let's get back to this. We still have a bit of a mess. I'm going to go down through this. Up here, we have these global variables I mentioned before. These are static strings. They're going to be in RO data. I'm not going to put them in right now to avoid messing with some other offsets. I will change their type though. so that this matches. This should be 7-0 up here. And those should all match. Oh, there's a G player. I changed it to G Dop, and that makes sense because this. I'm just so used to replacing all the players with Doppleganger symbols that it was just a habit. So this top section looks pretty good. Down on 43. This is going to be a for loop down here, so we can rewrite this now. That makes sense. And so I'm going to have to pay attention to var s2. Var s2 is going to be replaced by I everywhere. We don't have an I variable yet, but we will get one. And so there's a couple other things going on here. Var s2, oh, was var s2 set to 1 to start with? That's interesting. So we'll oblige. And this S4 looks like it's loading part of an address, possibly. Oh, very cool. What type of game are you building? So var S0 is going to be an entity, and we'll just call it entity. I do this because I'm not, oops, I don't want to do that. I do decompilation because I'm not creative enough to make games. Or smart enough. So these are all, basically this is going to be entity plus plus. We can get away with doing a plus plus there as well. And let's see how this is looking. So there's some out of order stuff going on. I'm going to change this to... This almost seems like it should be an or as opposed to an add, but add is how it's listed. And I think this is happening before the create. So I'll rewrite that like this. That looks nicer. Var 0. Oh, I'm not... that's what's happening. This can all be entity as well. And maybe I need to move these back now. Targeting any platform or just modern modern stuff? So here we're looking at the player status. I'm not sure. We should grab what these these enums will be. I'll do that in a second. What I think is interesting about Soten is I don't know how much applicability it has to modern games. The way that it is written is just so odd. So here we're looking for bat form, mist form, wolf form. I don't think that Doppleganger, though, can turn into wolf. So this looks like it's just a leftover from the player. No, that. Oh, this is it is checking the player, isn't it? And this is looking at the player. Okay. And then we have pad enums as well, and these are nice to have in there. Usually, I'll let the linter do this. Any idea yet? Is it a Metroidvania style game, or is it going to be a platformer? What kind of game is it? Pitch your game. You have the floor. So this looks like it's simulating the gamepad buttons, which is really curious. So when we come in, we're basically forcing, if you're in one of the forms, we're forcing the button, like the virtual button, to be pressed. Nice. That sounds awesome. I'm glad that there is such a resurgence of classic style games, especially when adding some of the modern like gameplay elements in there. I don't know how I feel about parry mechanics, though. That's just my personal preference. I know that's Dark Souls. Dark Souls is more dodge, right, than parry. It's not like the modern FromSoft. I haven't played Elden Ring, so I don't know if Elden Ring parries, but Bloodborne and Sekiro were so parry heavy. All right. Oh, we're at 83. Haven't really been paying attention to the counter. So some register mismatches. Not worried about GAPI. That'll be correct. Is it going to have like this a Castlevania type aesthetic, or more in gameplay style? Very cool. That is something that I think has aged extremely well with Symphony of the Night. Also, what turned me off about Symphony of the Night when I saw it almost 30 years ago And now one of the things I think is the best about it. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, go for it. Yeah, I have a lot of trouble with the artistic side as well. That is numbers and coordinates and things like that I can deal with, but not so much the other things. Oh, that looks awesome. Very beautiful. I will move this to my main window. Yeah, that looks really nice. The cloud effects are awesome. I think that looks great. I mean, the door, very, very Soten door. Nice bell. I was playing through, I mentioned earlier, I was playing through Soten. Oh, and Fleaman. Oh, get the Fleaman out of here. Going into the library and showing my son the the bookcase, the rotating bookcase. Are you using SDL or what? Building it on anything? Nice. Oh, I'm not signed into Twitter, and so it's not letting me. Let me see if my other profiles. Oh, no. It's not letting me load your profile without signing in. I guess I can sign in over here. Are you oh, come on. That's not working for me. I'll take a look at it later. This looks very cool though. Definitely thank you for stopping by and sharing that. I was at a convention about 1.5 years ago, and I don't know if I have the tabs open anywhere, but there was an indie dev there who was making a kind of a Mega Man style game, but had some like full screen graphical effects, lot of style, a lot of unique things that set it apart from Mega Man stylistically, but gameplay wise, it looked pretty similar to Mega Man. And I thought it was just incredible that just one guy could come along and make something so deep. I don't think it's out yet, which is unfortunate. Hopefully that's something that he can get out eventually, but that is awesome. Uh-oh. Super Demelli, I'm sorry, but you are banned. Let's see. So I've offset X already, so this is kind of another X-type variable. I'm always amazed, too. I did some OpenGL a long time ago, kind of back when OpenGL versus DirectX was a serious competition, if that if that dates that experience at all. But I enjoyed it quite a bit. Let's see this. We built a presentation engine in OpenGL, and there still isn't anything. I'm really surprised that nobody has kind of tackled this space, and maybe it's just not anything that should be tackled, but writing presentations that were in a full 3D space. I thought that was kind of an interesting idea for us, and it looked pretty cool. Yeah, and what's interesting, I don't know the way you're doing sprite work, but everything in Soten is a texture mapped to a polygon. And because of the way that the PlayStation does scaling, they knew that if they make a polygon of a certain integer size, that texture is going to be applied and the pixels will all align perfectly, and so we get these real nice crisp pixels, and it looks like a just a sprite based game, but everything's on polygons, and so they can do rotations and things like that for multi-segmented enemies and effects. A couple, maybe a month or so ago, we were looking at the Demon Familiar? No, Sword Familiar. And the Sword Familiar has an attack where it does move in 3D space, which is something that would be much harder if it was just sprite based. All right, what am I doing? I'm going to go from the bottom and see if there's anything obvious here. So these are specific entities. I'm not sure what is special about entity 160, but what is happening here is we're taking hex 1780 bytes away from entity 160. And so off screen, I'm just going to grab a calculator and do that math. And I'm going to get the math wrong because every time I do this, it's wrong. Entities are size BC. So this should be 20 away. So I should be able to type 180 there and this calculate to the same thing. And it's wrong. Of course it's wrong. Oh, because it's 20 hex, not 20. So this will be 192. Yay, that works. Gotta think in hex to decimal conversion all the time. So that's looking good. Register issues, not concerned with that. We have something similar up here, same idea. This is entity 224. We need to add 32, so 256. That's actually the last, this is the end of the entity table. I wonder if we have a macro or constant for that. Seems like a good idea. Yeah, nearest neighbor will give you that real chunky look. So this 40 I think is going. So we're starting at -40 and then adding delta x plus, sorry, we're adding 80 for each iteration. So I think that this is going to be 128 times I minus 64. And there's not going to be a variable tracking that along the way. And let's see if that works out. It didn't. So let's do this. Let's say that this is -64, and then we're going to subtract delta x down here. Sometimes this happens where there's a variable that seems superfluous. But without it, nothing works. The other option is that this is, this happens too, this is not a style that I like at all, but putting the assignment in the for loop and kind of doing a multi-assignment and then a multi-increment here, I really dislike that style. Yuck. But it's not mine to choose, and that doesn't work either. So I'm not sure what is going on there. I'm going to revert it to this for now, and what is causing that ordering to be off, I'm not sure, but we'll come back to it and see. Yeah, Monday through Thursday, I stream 11 a.m. Pacific time to usually about 12:30 Pacific time. I started a little late today. So I'm going a little longer, and I probably should wrap up, actually. Let me look at this one more thing. Can't help myself. We're missing a condition here, which almost makes me think that this isn't, that M2C looked at this structure and kind of mapped it to a switch statement, but really it's not. It may just be an if-else. Where is this V1 being calculated? This, yeah, so this, yeah, I'm not sure. And let's go back up to the top and see if there's anything obvious that I've missed up here. 51. I originally had this as a +1 and not wasn't saving it to the variable, and I think that's what that's upset about, and that's correct. So I'm going to leave this here today. We're close to 90% match. None of this is terribly complex, So I think we should be able to get to a match tomorrow sometime. But until then, if you want to know more about the Symphony of the Night Decomp project, you can go to soten.z.dev. As Rizoma mentioned, this is Zinamo's project. It's not my project. I'm just a contributor, and I like to decomp, and I like to see what other people think of decomp, talk to people in chat, go over, try to teach people things about Soten. I know, so sometimes Mozilla or Eldritch pops in chat. They know everything about Soten. I know when it comes to Soten, I'm an egg. So don't ask me Soten specific questions, except for areas that I have decompiled and maybe know details that are not obvious to the average person. But gameplay wise, I love the game, but I'm not a Soten encyclopedia. If there are specific things people want to see, I've mentioned a couple times this week that people ask for a Splat tutorial. I do think that would be good, and maybe I'll put something together tomorrow for that. I did get my schedule for Game On Expo. I will be there on Saturday, and the Decompiling Symphony of the Night talk is going to be at 7 p.m. on Saturday. So if you're in the Phoenix area and you are attending the Game On Expo, I'd like to meet you. Come say hi. Saturday is April. The 5th of April. Saturday the 5th of April, downtown Phoenix, 7 p.m. Unfortunately, they put me right up against music of Splatoon. That's a soundtrack, coincidentally, that is played a lot in my house, and I have to miss it. So maybe I'll wrap up early and send everybody over to the music of Splatoon panel. That won't be me, though. I'll be next door talking about decompiling Soten. I'll be back tomorrow, 11 a.m. Pacific time or thereabouts, for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. I'll see you then. Adios.